Story 1. The Silent Guardian. The rain pattered against the windows of St. Mary's Hospital in Boston, creating a soothing rhythm that contrasted with the chaos inside. Dr. Emma Mitchell rushed through the sliding doors, her scrubs already damp from the short dash from the parking lot. Another 12-hour shift in the pediatric intensive care unit awaited her, and she was running late. "Sorry, Claire," Emma called to the head nurse as she hurried to the locker room. "Traffic was a nightmare." "No worries," Claire replied, glancing up from her computer. "It's been relatively quiet this morning. Oh, and there's something you should know." Before Claire could finish, Emma had disappeared down the hallway. Whatever it was would have to wait. Emma's mind was already shifting to her patients, mentally reviewing their charts and conditions as she changed into dry scrubs. When she emerged and headed toward the nurse's station to collect her files, a strange sight caught her attention. Sitting in the corner of the waiting area was a large orange tabby cat. The animal sat perfectly still, amber eyes watching the comings and goings of hospital staff with unusual intensity. "Claire," Emma called, pointing to the cat. "Whose pet is that? You know animals aren't allowed in the PICU." Claire looked up and sighed. "That's what I was trying to tell you. He showed up 3 days ago, just walked straight through the main entrance and came up to the pediatric floor. Security has removed him twice, but he keeps finding his way back in. No collar, no microchip. We've started calling him Phoenix." Emma frowned. "Well, he can't stay here. It's against hospital protocol, not to mention the risk of infections and allergies." "Trust me, we know," Claire replied. "Dr. Harrison already called animal control, but they're backed up and can't come until tomorrow. In the meantime, that cat won't budge. It's the strangest thing. He doesn't make noise, doesn't bother anyone, just watches." Emma shook her head and approached the cat. "Hey, buddy, you can't stay here," she said gently, reaching to scoop him up. The cat stood, but instead of allowing himself to be picked up, he walked a few steps away, then turned to look at her expectantly. "I think he wants you to follow him," Claire said, a small smile playing on her lips. "Don't be ridiculous," Emma muttered, though something about the cat's demeanor gave her pause. Throughout her career, she'd heard stories about animals behaving strangely in hospitals, therapy dogs, who seemed to know which patients needed comfort most, cats in nursing homes who would sit with residents shortly before they passed away. But Emma was a woman of science, not superstition. "I've got rounds to do." As Emma made her way through the ward, checking on her young patients, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Sure enough, the orange tabby had followed her at a distance, maintaining a respectful but persistent presence. "Your new friend seems determined," commented Dr. Mark Stevens, a colleague who had joined her for rounds. "He's not my friend," Emma replied, "and he won't be here much longer. Animal control is coming tomorrow." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Well, until then, it seems you've got a shadow." Throughout the morning, the cat continued his silent vigil, following Emma from room to room but never entering. Each time she emerged, he would be waiting in the hallway, watching her with those intelligent amber eyes. By lunchtime, Emma had almost grown accustomed to his presence. She sat alone in the break room, picking at a salad while reviewing test results on her tablet. The door had been left slightly ajar, and, within moments, Phoenix slipped in. "You're persistent, I'll give you that," Emma said, watching as the cat sat a few feet away, his tail wrapped neatly around his paws. Perhaps it was the exhaustion from her consecutive shifts, or maybe it was the fact that she hadn't talked to anyone outside the hospital in days. But Emma found herself speaking to the cat. "You know, I became a doctor to help people, to make a difference," she said, pushing her salad away. "But some days, it feels like I'm just delaying the inevitable, especially with Lily." Lily Thompson was Emma's youngest patient, a 7-year-old with a rare form of leukemia. Despite aggressive treatment, the little girl's condition had been deteriorating rapidly. The previous night, Emma had to tell Lily's parents that they were running out of options. "Her parents are devastated," Emma continued, surprised by how easily the words flowed. They're considering an experimental treatment at Johns Hopkins, but insurance won't cover it, and they can't afford it on their own. Phoenix blinked slowly, his gaze never wavering. Why am I even telling you this? Emma laughed ruefully, gathering her things. You're just a cat who happened to wander into the wrong building. As Emma stood to leave, Phoenix darted to the door, blocking her exit. He meowed for the first time. A loud, insistent sound that startled her. Move, please, Emma said firmly, nudging him gently with her foot. Instead of moving, Phoenix circled around and tugged at her pant leg with his teeth. Hey, stop that. Emma pulled away, irritated now. What do you want? The cat released her pants and walked a few steps down the hallway, then looked back, meowing again. A chill ran down Emma's spine. Claire's words echoed in her mind. I think he wants you to follow him. Against her better judgment, Emma found herself trailing after the orange tabby. He led her past the nurse's station, where Claire raised an eyebrow but said nothing, and down the corridor toward the wing, housing the long-term patients. Phoenix paused outside room 412, Lily's room. This is ridiculous, Emma muttered, but she peered through the window nonetheless. Inside, Lily lay sleeping, her small frame dwarfed by the hospital bed and surrounding equipment. Her parents weren't present. Emma had insisted they go home and rest after spending 3 consecutive nights at their daughter's bedside. Phoenix meowed again, softer this time, and pawed at the door. Emma hesitated. She wasn't scheduled to check on Lily for another hour, but something about the cat's behavior had her reaching for the door handle. The room was quiet save for the steady beeping of monitors. Emma approached the bed and checked Lily's vitals out of habit. Everything appeared stable, if not improved. Phoenix had followed her inside and now jumped onto the windowsill, settling into a comfortable position. You can't be in here, Emma whispered harshly, moving to remove him. Just then, Lily's eyes fluttered open. Her gaze moved from Emma to the cat, and a smile, the first real smile Emma had seen in weeks, spread across her pale face. A kitty, Lily said, her voice weak but unmistakably delighted. Emma froze, torn between hospital protocol and the joy on her patient's face. Just for a minute, she conceded, moving back to check Lily's chart. To Emma's surprise, the cat jumped from the windowsill to the foot of Lily's bed, careful not to disturb any of the tubes or wires connected to the child. He patted softly up the side and settled next to Lily, who reached out a thin hand to stroke his fur. He's so soft, Lily whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. What's his name? Phoenix, Emma replied, watching the interaction carefully. But he doesn't belong here. He's just a stray that wandered in. Phoenix, Lily repeated, as the cat began to purr loudly. Like the bird that comes back to life from the ashes. I read about it in my storybook. Emma nodded, a lump forming in her throat. That's right. I think he came here to help me get better, Lily said with the simple conviction only a child could muster. For the next several minutes, Emma watched as Lily petted the cat, her movements becoming stronger, and her voice more animated as she told Phoenix about her favorite toys and books at home. The change in the girl's demeanor was remarkable. It was as if the cat's presence had infused her with new energy. Eventually, Emma knew she had to end the visit. Lily, I need to take Phoenix out now. Animals aren't supposed to be in the hospital, especially not in patients' rooms. Lily's face fell, but she nodded bravely. Can he come back tomorrow? I don't know, Emma said honestly. We'll see. As Emma gently lifted Phoenix from the bed, Lily called out, Dr. Emma, my tummy doesn't hurt anymore when Phoenix is here. Emma paused, looking back at the child. Lily had been complaining of severe abdominal pain for days, requiring increasing doses of medication to manage her discomfort. Really? No pain at all? Lily shook her head. He's magic. Outside in the hallway, Emma set Phoenix down, her mind racing. The improvement in Lily's spirits was undeniable, and the claim about her pain subsiding was intriguing, if scientifically inexplicable. Emma had read studies about animal therapy reducing stress, and even temporarily alleviating symptoms in some patients. But this seemed different somehow. "Dr. Mitchell?" Claire's voice broke through her thoughts. "Everything okay?" Emma hesitated. Phoenix got into Lily's room. Claire's eyes widened. "Oh no, should I call?" "No," Emma interrupted, surprising herself. Actually, it was remarkable. Lily was more animated than I've seen her in weeks. She even said her pain was gone while he was there. "Animal therapy is powerful," Claire said with a knowing smile. "But what are you going to do?" "Dr. Harrison will have a fit if he finds out there's a cat roaming the PICU." Emma glanced down at Phoenix, who sat calmly at her feet, as if waiting for her decision. "Let me handle Harrison. In the meantime, can you check if any of our patients have documented cat allergies?" Claire raised an eyebrow but nodded. "I'll have that information for you within the hour." Throughout the rest of her shift, Emma found herself watching Phoenix more closely. The cat continued to follow her, but also seemed to know which patients needed attention before their monitors even showed changes. Twice, Phoenix stationed himself outside rooms where patients would set off alarms. Minutes later, it was uncanny, almost as if he could sense the changes in their conditions before the medical equipment could. By the end of her shift, Emma had made a decision that went against every protocol and possibly her better judgment. After confirming with Claire that none of the current PICU patients had cat allergies, she approached Dr. Harrison's office. "Absolutely not," he said after listening to her proposal. "I understand the potential therapeutic benefits, but the risks far outweigh them. Infection control alone would." "With all due respect, Dr. Harrison," Emma interrupted, "Lily Thompson showed more improvement in 15 minutes with that cat than she has in the last 2 weeks with our treatments. Her pain subsided, her mood elevated, and her vitals stabilized." "Correlation is not causation, Dr. Mitchell. You know that." "I do," Emma acknowledged. "But I also know that we're running out of options for Lily. The experimental treatment at Johns Hopkins is her best chance, but until her parents can arrange it, we need to keep her comfortable and as strong as possible. If this cat helps with that, even temporarily, isn't it worth considering?" Dr. Harrison removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. "You're suggesting we allow a stray cat with unknown vaccination status and potential pathogens to interact with our most vulnerable patients? I'm suggesting we get him checked by a vet immediately, and if he's healthy, consider a trial period as a therapy animal exclusively for Lily. Controlled, supervised visits." After a long pause, Dr. Harrison sighed. "Get the cat checked out tonight. If, and only if, he receives a clean bill of health, we can discuss a very limited trial. But at the first sign of any negative impact, this experiment ends." "Understood." Emma nodded, relief washing over her. "Understood. Thank you." That evening, instead of heading home, Emma found herself at an emergency veterinary clinic with Phoenix secured in a carrier borrowed from Claire, who apparently kept one in her car, just in case. "He's in remarkably good health for a stray," the veterinarian, Dr. Patel, told her after a thorough examination. "Good weight, no parasites, no signs of disease. He's neutered, too, which suggests he was someone's pet at some point." "Can you tell how old he is?" Emma asked, watching as Phoenix calmly submitted to the examination. "I'd estimate around 3 to 4 years, Dr. Patel replied. "Prime of his life for a cat, and unusually well-behaved. I might add, most cats would be climbing the walls of the exam room by now." After Phoenix received necessary vaccinations and a microchip paid for out of Emma's own pocket, they headed to her apartment. The plan was for Phoenix to stay with her until animal control could assess whether he could officially become a therapy cat for the hospital. Emma's apartment felt strangely less empty with Phoenix padding around, investigating each room with feline curiosity. She'd stopped at a pet store on the way home, purchasing the essentials: litter box, food, a bed, and a few toys. Just temporary, she reminded herself as she set up Phoenix's supplies in a corner of her kitchen. "Until we figure out what to do with you." Phoenix watched her preparations, with what Emma could have sworn was amusement in his amber eyes. "Don't get comfortable," she told him, though her tone lacked conviction. "This is just a stopover for you." That night, Emma found herself sharing her thoughts with Phoenix as she prepared for bed. It had been a long time since she'd had anyone, or anything, to talk to at home. Her work schedule had made maintaining relationships difficult, and her last serious boyfriend had ended things 6 months earlier, citing her unavailability. "I'm not normally this impulsive," she told Phoenix, who had settled on the end of her bed. "Bringing strays home, bending hospital rules. That's not me. But there's something about you." Phoenix blinked slowly. A gesture Emma had read somewhere was a cat's way of showing affection. "And what you did for Lily today, I can't explain it, but it was real. I saw it." As Emma drifted off to sleep, she found herself wondering about Phoenix's past. Who had he belonged to? How had he ended up at St. Mary's? And most perplexing of all, how did he seem to know which patients needed help? The next morning, Emma arrived at the hospital earlier than usual, Phoenix secured in the carrier. She'd cleared his visits with security and infection control, and though the approval was provisional, it was enough to begin what Emma had begun thinking of as the Phoenix Project. Lily's face lit up when Emma entered her room with the carrier. "Phoenix, you came back." "He did," Emma confirmed, setting the carrier on a chair and opening its door. "And guess what? If these visits go well and help you feel better, he might be able to come see you regularly." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Every day? We'll see," Emma cautioned, not wanting to promise too much. "For now, let's just enjoy today's visit." "Okay." For the next hour, Emma observed as Lily and Phoenix interacted. The cat seemed to instinctively know how to behave around the girl's medical equipment, never disturbing tubes or wires. He lay patiently as Lily stroked his fur and talked to him about her dreams of becoming a veterinarian someday. "When I get better," Lily told Phoenix, "I'm going to help animals like you. My mom says we might even be able to get a cat of our own." Emma noticed with interest that Lily's vital signs remained strong throughout the visit, and the girl didn't ask for pain medication once, a significant departure from her usual routine. As the days passed, Phoenix became something of a fixture at St. Mary's. Though his official role was as Lily's therapy cat, staff noticed that he seemed drawn to patients in particular distress. More than once, nurses reported finding Phoenix sitting outside the room of a patient who would experience complications within hours. Dr. Harrison, initially skeptical, couldn't deny the positive impact Phoenix was having, particularly on Lily. The girl's condition, while still serious, had stabilized enough that her parents were able to finalize arrangements for her transfer to Johns Hopkins for the experimental treatment. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up," Dr. Harrison told Emma one afternoon. "Her latest blood work shows improvement, small but significant." Emma knew that Phoenix couldn't cure Lily's cancer, but the cat's presence seemed to give the child something medicine alone couldn't provide: hope. And sometimes, Emma reflected, hope was the most powerful medicine of all. 2 weeks after Phoenix's first official visit, Lily was scheduled to be transferred to Johns Hopkins. The evening before her departure, Emma brought Phoenix for what might be their last visit together. "I'm scared," Lily admitted, her small hand buried in Phoenix's orange fur. "What if the new treatment doesn't work? What if I never come back home?" Emma sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "Being scared is okay, Lily. Even adults get scared sometimes, especially about things we can't control. But remember how brave you've been so far. That bravery is still inside you." "But Phoenix won't be there," Lily said, tears welling in her eyes. "He helps me be brave." Emma glanced at the cat, who was watching Lily with an intensity that still sometimes unnerved her. An idea formed, crazy, perhaps, but no crazier than everything else that had happened since Phoenix appeared at St. Mary's. "What if," Emma began slowly, "Phoenix could go with you? Not to stay at the hospital, but to live with your parents while you're getting treatment? That way, he could visit you when the hospital allows it." Lily's eyes widened. Really? Could he? I'd have to talk to your parents and make sure it's okay with them, Emma cautioned. And there are details to work out. But if everyone agrees, yes, I think Phoenix could continue to be your special friend, even in Baltimore. Later that night, Emma spoke with Lily's parents, Robert and Sarah Thompson. To her surprise, they immediately embraced the idea. That cat has done more for our daughter's spirits than anything else, Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. If having him nearby helps Lily through this next phase, we're all for it. We've already checked, and our accommodation in Baltimore allows pets, Sarah added. And Johns Hopkins has a pet therapy program. They may allow visits under their guidelines. Emma felt a strange mix of emotions, relief that Phoenix would continue to help Lily, but an unexpected sadness at the thought of saying goodbye to the cat who had mysteriously entered her life just weeks ago. The next morning, as Lily was being prepared for transport, Emma brought Phoenix to say goodbye to the hospital staff, who had grown fond of him. Claire, in particular, seemed emotional. Who would have thought a stray cat would change so many lives around here, she said, scratching Phoenix behind the ears. He's special, that one. Emma nodded, unable to articulate how profoundly Phoenix had affected her own life. Not just through his inexplicable ability to sense patients in need, but by reminding her why she'd become a doctor in the first place, to connect with people, to bring comfort and healing in whatever form it took. As she handed Phoenix's carrier to Robert Thompson, Emma felt a lump form in her throat. Take good care of him, she said. He's extraordinary. We will, Robert promised. And we'll keep you updated on both Lily and Phoenix. You've given our family so much hope, Dr. Mitchell. After Lily and her family departed, Emma found herself standing alone in the now empty hospital room. The space felt hollow, without Lily's presence and Phoenix's watchful gaze. Dr. Harrison appeared in the doorway. They're gone. Emma nodded. Yes. The transport team said everything went smoothly. Good. Harrison hesitated, then added, You know, Mitchell, when you first proposed this therapy cat idea, I thought you'd lost your mind. But I have to admit, the results speak for themselves. Lily's condition improved enough to make her a candidate for the Johns Hopkins trial. That's not nothing. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Harrison replied with a hint of a smile. The administration was impressed enough that they're considering implementing a formal pet therapy program. Guess who they want to head it up? Emma's eyebrows shot up. Me. Unless you're not interested. No, I mean, yes, I'm interested, Emma stammered. Very interested. As Harrison walked away, Emma turned back to look at Lily's empty bed. What had begun as a strange encounter with a stray cat had blossomed into something much more significant, a new approach to patient care at St. Mary's, a chance at recovery for Lily, and unexpected new direction in Emma's own career. 3 months later, Emma received an email from Sarah Thompson. Attached was a photo of Lily, sitting up in a hospital bed at Johns Hopkins, her color improved and a smile on her face. Curled up beside her was Phoenix, his orange fur vibrant against the white hospital linens. The message read, Lily wanted you to know that Phoenix is still working his magic. Her doctors are amazed by her response to the treatment. They're using words like remarkable and unprecedented. We don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, we have real hope. Phoenix visits 3 times a week through the hospital's pet therapy program, and the staff here are just as enchanted with him as everyone was at St. Mary's. Lily says to tell you that Phoenix is helping other kids, too. Somehow he always knows who needs it most. Thank you for seeing what we couldn't, that sometimes healing comes in the most unexpected forms. Emma smiled as she read the message, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. St. Mary's Pet Therapy program was now in full swing, with 3 certified therapy dogs and another cat joining the team. But none of them quite had Phoenix's uncanny abilities. Sometimes, Emma found herself glancing down hospital corridors, half expecting to see an orange tabby, watching her with knowing amber eyes. And though she missed his presence, she took comfort in knowing that Phoenix was exactly where he needed to be, continuing his silent guardianship over those who needed him most. In the world of modern medicine, with its cutting-edge technology and evidence-based protocols, Phoenix had reminded everyone at St. Mary's of a simple truth. Healing involves not just the body, but the spirit. And sometimes, the most powerful medicine comes with four paws, a purr, and an inexplicable wisdom that transcends human understanding. As for Emma, she had learned perhaps the most important lesson of all, to trust not just in science, but in the mysteries that science couldn't yet explain. In doing so, she had rediscovered the heart of healing, guided by an unlikely teacher who had appeared when she needed him most, a silent guardian with orange fur and eyes that seemed to see into the very soul of those around him. Story 2. Healing Whispers. The howling wind cut through the tall pines of Silver Creek Valley as Olivia Reeves stepped out onto her cabin porch. Her weathered hands clutched a steaming mug of tea, the only warmth against the Montana winter that had settled into her bones. 23 years as a wildlife rehabilitator had taught her to read the mountain's moods, and today it seemed restless, unsettled. She scanned the property. 3 acres of sanctuary she'd built with nothing but determination and the settlement money from her husband's accident. 7 wooden enclosures dotted the landscape, each housing wolves at various stages of rehabilitation. Not the dangerous predators that fearful locals imagined, but injured creatures with eyes that held more wisdom than most humans she'd met. Morning, Echo, she called softly to the silver female watching from the nearest enclosure. The wolf's ears perked forward, acknowledging Olivia without breaking her vigilant posture. Olivia checked her watch and frowned. Mason was late. Her assistant never missed feeding time. The wolves depended on routine, especially Timber, the massive black alpha who'd arrived 3 years ago. With a bullet in his shoulder and rage in his eyes, he'd become the cornerstone of her program, proof that even the most damaged souls could heal. A distant engine rumbled up the gravel drive, but it wasn't Mason's familiar pickup. Instead, a county sheriff's SUV emerged from the tree line, its official presence immediately putting Olivia on edge. Sheriff Carter Dawson stepped out, his expression grim beneath his wide-brimmed hat. "Morning, Liv," he said, removing his hat. They'd known each other since high school, but the formality in his voice made her stomach tighten. "What's wrong? Is it Mason?" Carter nodded. "Afraid so. Car accident late last night. He's alive but in surgery. Thing is," he hesitated, "he wasn't alone." Olivia gripped her mug tighter. "What do you mean?" "Had his 10-year-old nephew with him. Boy's name is Liam. Parents are overseas with the military. Mason's been his guardian." The implication hung heavy between them. The boy, physically, just some cuts and bruises. But he hasn't spoken a word since they pulled him from the wreck. Doctors say it's trauma. Olivia closed her eyes briefly. "And you're telling me this because—" Mason regained consciousness briefly. "Asked for you specifically. Said Liam needs to be here, with you. And the wolves." Carter shifted uncomfortably. "I know it's a lot to ask. A child. Here." Olivia gestured toward the enclosures. "This isn't exactly a place for kids, Carter. I have 7 rehabilitating wolves, including one that still doesn't trust humans. I'm not equipped for it." "Mason seemed to think you were exactly what the boy needs. Said Liam's been obsessed with wolves since he could walk. Reads everything about them, draws them constantly. There's a difference between interest and living 50 feet from them," Olivia countered. Carter placed his hat back on his head. "Just thought you should know. Social Services is looking for placement options. Mason will be in recovery for months if he pulls through." The "if" landed like a stone in her chest. "Where's the boy now?" "Hospital. Observation. They'll release him tomorrow." Carter hesitated. "Just think about it, Liv. 23 years you've been healing wild things. Maybe this one just has 2 legs instead of 4. After Carter left, Olivia stood motionless on the porch, watching as the wolves sensed her distress. Echo paced the fence line, her movements agitated. Timber sat perfectly still, yellow eyes fixed on Olivia as if waiting for direction. I don't do people, she whispered to them. Not anymore. But that night, as snow began to fall in thick, silent flakes, Olivia found herself pulling boxes from the attic. Tucked inside one was a small wooden wolf her husband had carved years ago, before the accident, that turned their dreams to dust. She ran her thumb over its smooth surface, remembering how they'd once talked about filling this cabin with children. By morning, she'd cleared out the small spare room and called the hospital. Liam Parker was smaller than she expected, a thin boy with dark hair and eyes that reminded her of a trapped animal, wary, assessing every exit. His backpack, clutched against his chest, contained little more than a sketchbook, some clothes, and a tattered book on North American wolves. The social worker, a young woman named Anita, handed Olivia the paperwork. It's temporary. Guardianship, just until his uncle recovers or his parents return. He hasn't spoken since the accident, but the doctors say there's no physical reason, just trauma. Olivia nodded, signing where indicated. I understand. Anita lowered her voice. Are you sure this environment is appropriate? I understand you work with wolves, rehabilitating injured wolves for release, yes. Olivia met the woman's concerned gaze. They're secured, in proper enclosures. The boy will be safe. Well, Anita glanced at Liam, who stared out the window. Let's just say we're not overwhelmed with options right now, but I'll be checking in regularly. The drive back to the sanctuary was silent. Olivia made occasional comments about landmarks they passed, but Liam remained fixed on the scenery, his small hand tracing patterns on the fogged window. As they pulled up to the cabin, his posture changed. He sat up straighter, eyes widening as he spotted the enclosures. For the first time, something other than fear crossed his face, a flicker of interest. That's Echo, Olivia said, pointing to the silver wolf watching their arrival. She was caught in a trap last spring, and over there is Sage. She's nearly ready for release. Liam pressed his face to the window, drinking in the sight of the wolves. They're not pets, Olivia continued, parking the truck. They're wild animals that have been injured. My job is to help them heal so they can return to their natural habitat. You'll need to keep your distance and follow every rule I give you. Understand? Liam nodded, a sharp, deliberate motion that conveyed his seriousness despite his silence. Inside the cabin, Olivia showed him to the small room she'd prepared. Bathrooms across the hall. Kitchen's always open if you're hungry. I start wolf care at 6 a.m. sharp. She paused, unsure what else to say to this silent child. Questions? Liam shook his head. All right then. She turned to leave, but stopped when she heard the zipper of his backpack opening. Liam pulled out his sketchbook and held it toward her, his expression insistent. Olivia took it hesitantly. Inside were dozens of wolf drawings, anatomically correct, detailed, revealing an understanding of wolf behavior and pack dynamics that surprised her. The last few pages showed wolves in various injured states, one with a trapped paw, another with what appeared to be a gunshot wound, a third starving and alone. These are very good, she said softly. You understand them. Liam reached for a pencil from his bag and wrote in the margin of the last drawing. Can I see them all? The first few days established a routine. Liam followed Olivia like a shadow during her morning rounds, observing as she prepared medications, checked wounds, and recorded behaviors. He carried a small notebook, jotting questions that Olivia answered with the seriousness she'd give a colleague. What surprised her most was how the wolves responded to his presence. Echo, normally skittish around strangers, would press close to the fence when Liam approached. Shadow and Wisp, the young siblings, recovering from malnutrition, watched him with unusual intensity. They sensed something in you, Olivia remarked one morning as they prepared food. Something different. Liam didn't respond, but his methodical cutting of meat for the wolves continued without pause. His small hands worked with precision beyond his years. Only Timber remained aloof, watching from the far corner of his enclosure, never approaching when Liam was present. On the fifth night, a fierce storm hit the valley. Thunder shook the cabin's windows, and lightning cut jagged paths across the sky. Olivia was checking the enclosures, ensuring they were secure, when she noticed Liam standing barefoot on the porch, watching the wolves. They were agitated, pacing and alert, all except Timber, who sat perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the tree line beyond the property. "You should be in bed," Olivia said, joining Liam. "It's late." Liam pointed toward where Timber was focused, then frantically began writing in his notebook. "Something's coming. He knows." Olivia frowned, scanning the darkness. "There's nothing." A distant howl cut through the storm's chaos. A wild wolf, close to the property. Then another answered. Closer still. "A pack," Olivia murmured. "They don't usually come this near to human structures." Timber stood now, muscles tense. He released a low, rumbling growl that resonated across the sanctuary. One by one, the other rehabilitating wolves fell silent, deferring to his warning. "He's protecting them," Liam wrote. "The wild pack might attack the injured ones." Olivia looked at the boy with new appreciation. "You're right. Wild wolves sometimes eliminate sick or injured wolves they perceive as weak." Liam's face tightened with worry. He wrote quickly, "What can we do?" Before Olivia could answer, headlights swept up the drive. Carter's SUV emerged from the darkness, followed by another vehicle she didn't recognize. "Stay here," she told Liam. Carter stepped out, rain plastering his uniform to his body. "Evening, Liv. Got a situation." He gestured to the other vehicle, where a man in a Department of Wildlife Management jacket waited. "This is Agent Peterson. There's been complaints about wolf sightings too close to town. Rancher lost 3 sheep last night." Agent Peterson approached, his expression all business. "Ms. Reeves, we've received multiple reports about wild wolves in this area. Our concern is that your facility might be attracting them." "My wolves are secured and rehabilitating," Olivia countered. "They're not calling wild packs." "Nevertheless," Peterson continued, "we'll need to set up monitoring equipment and possibly traps on the perimeter of your property." "Traps?" Olivia's voice hardened. "Absolutely not. Half my rehabilitations are from animals injured in traps. We're talking humane capture systems," Peterson explained with practiced patience. "For tagging and relocation." Carter interjected. "There's a town meeting tomorrow about the wolf situation. Might be good if you attended, Liv. Explain your work. Calm some fears." Olivia glanced back at the porch where Liam stood watching, his small frame rigid with concern. "Fine. We'll be there." After they left, Olivia found Liam huddled in the living room, furiously sketching. The drawing taking shape under his pencil showed Timber standing as a barrier between the smaller wolves and shadowy, wild figures beyond the fence. "They want to take them away, don't they?" His voice was so unexpected, so small in the quiet room that Olivia almost didn't register that he'd spoken. It was the first sound he'd made since arriving. She sat down beside him, careful not to make too much of this breakthrough. "Some people are afraid of what they don't understand," she said. "Our job is to help them understand." Liam looked up at her, his dark eyes suddenly fierce. "Timber wants to go back. He's ready. But he won't leave until the others are safe." Olivia studied the boy, questions forming. "How do you know that?" Liam returned to his drawing. "The same way I know you don't sleep most nights. The same way I know you talk to your husband's picture when you think I'm asleep." His pencil moved in sure, strong strokes. Listen." The town hall was packed, anxious murmurs filling the space. Olivia recognized most faces, people who'd smiled politely while avoiding her gaze for years. The wolf woman they tolerated but never embraced. Liam sat beside her, his sketchbook open but untouched. Mayor Jackson called the meeting to order. "Folks, we're here to address concerns about increased wolf activity near town. Agent Peterson will outline the Wildlife Management Department's plan." Peterson stood, displaying maps and statistics. "We've confirmed a wild pack of at least 6 wolves moving through this region. There have been 3 livestock incidents in the past month, and multiple sightings near residential areas." A rancher Olivia recognized as Frank Miller stood up. My family's lost 5 sheep total. My grandkids play on that property. It's not safe. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Our plan, Peterson continued, includes monitoring equipment throughout the valley and humane traps placed at strategic locations. Captured wolves will be tagged and relocated to more remote areas. What about the wolf sanctuary? Someone called out. Isn't that drawing them here? All eyes turned to Olivia. She stood slowly, conscious of Liam watching her. The wolves in my care are injured animals rehabilitating for release, she began. They're contained in secure enclosures and pose no threat to the community. They're not attracting wild packs. In fact, wild wolves typically avoid areas with human structures. Then explain why they're suddenly in our backyard, Frank challenged. Development, Olivia said simply. The new housing project on the North Ridge has reduced their hunting territory by nearly 30%. They're adapting to a changing landscape, one we changed. Peterson stepped forward. While Ms. Reeves' work is commendable, it doesn't change the fact that we have a public safety issue. You're wrong. The small voice silenced the room. Liam had stood, his sketchbook clutched in white-knuckled hands. You're wrong about everything. His voice gained strength. Wolves don't attack people unless provoked. There hasn't been a single documented case of a healthy wild wolf killing a human in North America. Peterson blinked, clearly not expecting to be challenged by a child. Young man, I understand you're staying with Ms. Reeves, but this is... Did you know wolves mate for life? Liam continued, walking toward the front of the room. Or that pack. Members will bring food to injured members until they recover, or that they adopt orphan pups even, when resources are scarce. He turned to face the crowd. They're family. They protect each other. Like we're supposed to. He opened his sketchbook, holding up drawing after drawing. This is Echo. She was caught in a trap set by a rancher who didn't bother to check it for weeks. This is Shadow and Wisp. Their mother was shot because someone thought she was too close to their property. This is Timber. He held up the drawing he'd made the night before. He took a bullet protecting his mate. She didn't survive. The room fell silent. We keep pushing them out of their homes and then punishing them when they have nowhere else to go. Liam's voice wavered, just like people tried to do to me when my parents left and my uncle got hurt. Push me somewhere else because it was convenient. Olivia stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. What Liam is saying, in his way, is that we need to find solutions that work for everyone, wolves included. My sanctuary isn't the problem. It could be part of the solution. The meeting ended with a compromise. Instead of traps, the community would fund research equipment to better understand the wild pack's movements. Olivia would assist in a public education campaign about wolf behavior and safety. And most significantly, 3 local ranchers agreed to try wolf deterrent measures rather than lethal ones. As they drove home, Liam's silence had a different quality. Not the emptiness of trauma, but the fullness of contemplation. What you did tonight was brave, Olivia said finally. Using your voice like that. Liam looked out at the passing trees. Timber helped me remember how. What do you mean? The night of the accident, Liam said softly. Uncle Mason swerved to avoid a wolf crossing the road. We flipped into the ravine. When I woke up, Uncle Mason wouldn't answer me. There was so much blood. Olivia kept her eyes on the road, giving him space to continue. I climbed out to get help, but it was so dark. I got lost in the woods. That's when I saw him, a big black wolf watching me from the trees. He didn't come closer, just watched. Then he howled. Liam swallowed hard. Other wolves answered. Then I heard people calling my name. The search party. The wolf led them to me, then disappeared. You think it was Timber? Olivia asked gently. I know it was. His eyes are the same. He wasn't ready to be released yet back then. He was still healing at your sanctuary. But somehow he knew. Liam turned to her. I stopped talking because I thought if I told anyone about the wolf, they wouldn't believe me. Or worse, they hunt him down. Olivia thought about the night Timber had inexplicably disappeared from his enclosure 3 months ago, returning 2 days later with fresh cuts and exhaustion. She'd attributed it to a faulty lock. Now she wondered. Sometimes, she said carefully, wolves do things we can't explain. They sense things we don't. That's why I've dedicated my life to them. As they pulled up to the cabin, the wolves began to howl. All of them, even Echo, who rarely vocalized. It was a unified chorus that sent shivers through Olivia's body. And from the deep woods beyond the property, wild voices answered. Spring arrived in waves of green that swept up the mountainsides of Silver Creek Valley. 6 months had transformed the landscape and the lives within it. Mason had recovered enough to visit weekly, though he now walked with a cane. He watched with pride as Liam led tours of school children through the newly expanded sanctuary, explaining wolf behavior with the confidence of someone triple his age. He's different, Mason remarked to Olivia as they sat on the porch. Stronger. We all are, she replied, watching as Liam demonstrated proper howling technique to a delighted group of 4th graders. The sanctuary had evolved, with community support and a grant secured through Agent Peterson, who had become an unexpected ally. Olivia had built a proper education center. 4 of her rehabilitated wolves had been successfully released, including Echo, whose tracking collar showed she'd been accepted into a wild pack. Only Timber remained from the original group. Though fully healed for months, he showed no interest in leaving. Instead, he'd become an ambassador of sorts, his imposing presence a living testament to the majesty of his kind. Children who once feared wolves now pressed their hands against the viewing glass, awestruck by his golden eyes. Have you told him yet? Mason asked. Olivia shook her head. I'm waiting for the right moment. The right moment came that evening as Olivia and Liam sat on the observation deck, watching Timber pace his enclosure in the fading light. I got a call from your parents today, Olivia said carefully. Their deployment is ending. They'll be home next month. Liam's face remained impassive, but his hands tightened on the railing. I know. They want you to come home. This is home now. His voice was quiet but firm. I belong here. Olivia took a deep breath. I thought you might say that. So I spoke with them, and with Uncle Mason, about an arrangement. Liam turned to her, hope cautious in his eyes. Your parents will live on base, about 2 hours from here. They've agreed to let you continue school here, living with me during the week. Weekends and holidays with them. Really? His voice cracked with emotion. They agreed. On one condition. Olivia smiled. That I make it official. Become your legal guardian alongside them. Liam launched himself into her arms, a sob breaking from his chest. Thank you, he whispered. Below them, Timber had stopped pacing. He sat watching their embrace, his posture alert but calm. There's something else, Olivia said when Liam had collected himself. It's about Timber. He doesn't want to leave, Liam stated. No, he doesn't. But we need to respect what he is, a wild animal meant to be free. Liam nodded slowly. I know. He's been telling me it's time. Olivia had long stopped questioning how Liam seemed to understand the wolves' intentions. Some connections defied explanation. The biologists found something interesting with the tracking data, she continued. The wild pack that's been in this valley, they're not just passing through. They've established a permanent territory that includes the ridge line behind our property. Timber's original pack. It's possible. They've been vocal near our boundaries, especially on nights with a full moon. Olivia placed her hand on Liam's shoulder. We think it's time to try a soft release. Open Timber's enclosure, but continue providing food and shelter if he chooses to return. Like giving him a choice. Liam's eyes brightened. Exactly. He may go between worlds for a while, or he might choose one over the other. Either way, it will be his decision. 3 nights later, under a full moon, they opened Timber's gate. The massive black wolf approached the threshold cautiously, scenting the air. Liam and Olivia stood back, watching in reverent silence. Timber stepped beyond the boundary for the first time in nearly 4 years, his powerful body tense with newfound freedom. He turned back once, yellow eyes finding Liam's in the darkness. "It's okay," Liam whispered. "We'll be here." With that, Timber disappeared into the forest. Minutes later, a deep, resonant howl echoed through the valley. Wild voices answered, welcoming him home. Liam closed his eyes, breathing deeply. "He'll be back," he said with quiet certainty. Olivia put her arm around the boy's shoulders. "How do you know?" He looked up at her, a smile breaking across his face. "Because that's what family does. They always find their way back to each other." 2 nights later, as dawn broke over Silver Creek Valley, Liam's prediction proved true. Timber returned, not alone but with a sleek gray female wolf, who watched cautiously from the tree line as the black wolf approached the cabin. Standing on the porch, Liam smiled. "He wants her to meet his other family," he said. Olivia nodded, understanding flowing between them like the morning light spreading across the valley. Sometimes healing came from unexpected sources, from creatures with 4 legs instead of 2, from children who taught adults how to listen, from second chances that arose after all hope seemed lost. As Silver Creek Valley awakened to a new day, the howls of wild wolves blended with the sounds of human life beginning. Not separate worlds in conflict, but a single symphony of existence, each voice essential to the whole. And in that harmony, healing was found. Story 3. Healing Echoes. The Montana morning arrived with a silver mist that clung to the foothills like a ghost, veiling the edges of the wildlife sanctuary in ethereal light. Eliza Winters stood at the edge of the observation deck, her weathered hands gripping the railing as she scanned the tree line. At 53, the lines around her eyes had deepened, not just from age, but from the weight of experiences that had shaped her life. 20 years as a wildlife photographer in conflict zones had left her with more than just award-winning images. "He's out there somewhere," she murmured, the steam from her coffee rising like her unspoken anxieties. Behind her, footsteps approached on the wooden planks. "Still no sign of him?" asked Marcus, the sanctuary's young veterinarian. His voice carried the optimism of someone who hadn't yet been broken by loss. "Echo doesn't want to be found," Eliza replied, not taking her eyes off the distant tree line. "Can't blame him." Echo was a North American gray wolf who had been rescued from an illegal exotic animal trading ring 3 months ago. Unlike the other wolves they'd saved that day, Echo hadn't integrated with the sanctuary's pack. He remained distant, aggressive, a shadow that appeared only at dusk before vanishing again into the wilderness of the 200-acre sanctuary. "The others adapted so well," Marcus said, leaning against the railing beside her. "What makes him different?" Eliza took a slow sip of her coffee, the bitter warmth a poor substitute for the comfort she sought. "Because he remembers too much," she answered quietly. The truth was more complicated than that. Eliza recognized something in Echo that others couldn't see, a reflection of her own trauma. While the other staff members saw only a dangerous, unpredictable animal, she saw a survivor haunted by memories he couldn't escape. "The board's getting anxious," Marcus said, breaking the silence that had fallen between them. "If he doesn't show progress soon, they're talking about transferring him to a more restrictive facility." Eliza's jaw tightened. "He just needs time." "Time isn't something we have much of," Marcus replied gently. "They're giving him 2 more weeks." 2 weeks. The deadline hung in the air between them, as heavy as the mist that shrouded the sanctuary. "Then I better get to work," Eliza said, setting down her coffee mug with new determination. She turned away from the railing, heading back toward her cabin to gather her equipment. Marcus called after her, "Eliza, be careful. He's not like the others." She paused, turning slightly. "Neither am I," she replied over her shoulder before continuing down the path. In her small cabin at the edge of the sanctuary, Eliza rummaged through her old gear. Her fingers brushed against the worn leather bag that contained her camera equipment, untouched for nearly 2 years. The memories came flooding back as she unzipped it. The explosion, the dust, the cries of both humans and animals, caught in the crossfire of a conflict they didn't understand. She pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on what she needed now. At the bottom of her closet lay a wooden box, carefully preserved despite its journey across continents. She lifted it out, setting it on her bed with reverence. Inside was a collection of items from her years documenting wolf populations in war-torn regions, a small bone whistle carved by an elderly tracker who had taught her to move like a ghost through the forest, a vial of oil made from plants that masked human scent, and most importantly, a worn journal filled with observations and techniques. "Time to remember who I used to be," she whispered, running her fingers across the journal's cover. The afternoon sun had broken through the morning mist by the time Eliza made her way deep into the western section of the sanctuary. This area, with its dense pine forest and rocky outcroppings, was where Echo had been spotted most frequently. She moved slowly, deliberately, placing each foot with care to minimize sound. She chose a small clearing with good visibility, set up a blind of branches and canvas, and settled in to wait. Hours passed as the sun arced across the sky, casting shifting shadows through the pine branches. Eliza remained still, her breathing shallow and controlled. As dusk approached, she removed the bone whistle from around her neck and blew a soft, low tone. Not a wolf call, but something older, a sound that carried through the trees without direction, becoming part of the forest itself. The first time she saw Echo, it was just a flash of gray between the trees, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. But Eliza didn't move, didn't call out. Instead, she simply continued the slow, rhythmic breathing she had maintained for hours. The second appearance came closer, a gray shape materializing from the shadows at the edge of the clearing. Echo stood there, tense and alert, his amber eyes reflecting the dying light. He was magnificent despite his condition, lean from months of inconsistent feeding, with a jagged scar running across his left flank. But it was his eyes that held Eliza's attention, wary, intelligent, and filled with a wariness that cut her to the core. "Hello, old soul," she whispered, her voice barely audible even to her own ears. At the sound, Echo's ears flattened, and he took a step back, ready to flee. "It's okay," she continued in the same low tone. "I'm not going to move. I'm just going to sit here." True to her word, Eliza didn't attempt to approach. She simply existed in the same space, acknowledging his presence without demanding anything in return. After several tense minutes, Echo settled onto his haunches at the edge of the clearing, watching her with unblinking intensity. They remained like that, locked in silent communion, until the darkness grew too thick to see. When Eliza finally gathered her things to leave, Echo had already melted back into the forest, leaving no trace of his presence except for the impression of his body in the soft earth. Back at her cabin, Eliza documented the encounter in her journal, her handwriting becoming steadier with each word. For the first time since arriving at the sanctuary, she felt a sense of purpose flooding back into her veins. Sleep came easier that night than it had in months. The pattern continued for days. Eliza would take up her position in the clearing, wait for hours, sometimes seeing Echo, sometimes aware only of his presence, just beyond her vision. Each day, she would make a small adjustment, sitting slightly closer to where he appeared, bringing a small package of raw meat that she would leave on a rock before departing, speaking a few more words in her low, measured voice. On the fifth day, the rain came, a sudden, violent summer storm that lashed through the trees with unexpected fury. Eliza had just settled into her usual spot when the clouds opened above her. Within minutes, she was soaked through, but she didn't move. To leave now would undo the fragile routine she had established. Through the curtain of rain, a shape emerged, Echo, standing at the edge of the clearing, watching her with those intense amber eyes. This time, something was different. He limped heavily, favoring his right front paw. "You're hurt," Eliza said, concern overriding her careful protocol. Echo stopped, his body tense, but he didn't retreat. The rain plastered his thick coat to his body, revealing more clearly the network of old scars that told the story of his past. Slowly, deliberately, Eliza reached into her pack and withdrew a piece of meat. Rather than placing it on the ground, she held it in her outstretched hand. It was a risk. Wolves weren't dogs, and Echo was more cautious than most. But something told her it was time to push the boundary between them. "It's okay," she murmured, I understand pain too. For what seemed like an eternity, Echo remained frozen, the only movement the rise and fall of his chest as he breathed. Then, with painful slowness, he began to approach. Each step seemed to cost him, both physically from his injury and in the tremendous act of trust it represented. When he was just feet away, he stopped again, nostrils flaring as he scented the air between them. Eliza didn't move, didn't breathe. Her arm remained outstretched, the offering clear. Echo closed the final distance with sudden decision. His teeth closed gently around the meat, careful not to touch her fingers, before he retreated several paces to consume it. It wasn't much, but in that moment, a connection was forged that transcended words. As the rain continued to fall around them, Eliza spoke softly, not to tame or control, but to share. I know what it's like to carry the past with you, she told him, watching as he finished the meat and settled onto his belly, watching her, to hear sounds that aren't there anymore, to flinch at shadows. Echo's ears twitched, his head tilting slightly as if trying to understand the meaning behind her words. 2 years ago, I was photographing a wolf pack in Syria, she continued, the words coming easier now that she had started. They were amazing, adapting to life in an active war zone. I was documenting their resilience when the bombing started. She paused, the memories flooding back with unexpected force. The concussive blast, the screams, the dust that filled her lungs as she crawled toward the wolf den she had been observing. I couldn't save them, she said, her voice cracking. The whole pack. Gone. And I just stopped. Stopped photographing. Stopped caring. Stopped living, really. Echo's amber eyes never left her face, and in them, Eliza saw something that might have been understanding. We're both carrying ghosts, aren't we? She asked softly. The wolf blinked slowly, and for just a moment, the wariness in his gaze seemed to lessen. When he finally rose and disappeared back into the rain-soaked forest, Eliza felt something shift within her, a loosening of the tight knot of grief she had carried for so long. That night, she dreamed of running through endless forests with the freedom of a wild thing. The next morning, Eliza was awakened by an urgent knocking at her door. It was Marcus, his expression grim. It's Echo, he said without preamble. He's in the north section, near the electric fence. Something's wrong. Eliza's heart clenched. What happened? We're not sure. One of the maintenance workers spotted him. He's injured, moving strangely. We need to tranquilize him, but he's not letting anyone close. Eliza grabbed her jacket. No tranquilizers. Give me a chance first. Marcus looked uncertain. Eliza, he's a wild animal in distress. That's when they're most dangerous. Please, she insisted. Just give me 30 minutes with him before you bring in the rifles. Something in her expression must have convinced him, because he nodded reluctantly. 30 minutes. But I'm coming with you, and I'm bringing a tranq gun as backup. The north section of the sanctuary was the least developed, with the perimeter marked by a tall electric fence designed to keep the wolves in and intruders out. As Eliza and Marcus approached, they could see Echo pacing erratically near the fence line, his movements uncoordinated. He might have been shocked by the fence, Marcus said quietly, or he could have eaten something toxic. Eliza shook her head. No, look at him. That's panic, not poisoning. She moved forward slowly, leaving Marcus behind with instructions to stay back. As she approached, Echo's head snapped up, his eyes locking onto her. A low growl rumbled from his chest. It's okay, she called softly, stopping a good distance away. It's just me. The wolf's sides were heaving, his injured paw now held completely off the ground. But it was his eyes that concerned Eliza most, wide and wild with a terror that seemed to come from within rather than from any external threat. He's having a flashback, she realized suddenly, the recognition immediate and visceral. What? Marcus called from behind her. He's not here right now, she explained, not taking her eyes off Echo. Not mentally. Something triggered him, maybe the electrical hum from the fence, maybe a sound we can't even hear. With slow, deliberate movements, Eliza lowered herself to the ground, making herself smaller, less threatening. Then she did something that made Marcus call out in warning. She began to crawl forward, closing the distance between herself and the panicked wolf. Echo, she called, her voice firm but gentle. Echo, look at me. You're safe. You're at the sanctuary. The wolf snarled, backing toward the fence. Eliza froze, knowing that if he backed into it again, the shock might drive him to attack out of pure instinct. Listen to my voice, she continued steadily. Focus on me. This isn't the past. This is now, and you're safe now. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the bone whistle, bringing it to her lips. The soft, hollow tone floated through the air between them, ancient and soothing. Echo's ears flicked forward, his growling subsiding slightly as the familiar sound penetrated the fog of his panic. That's it, Eliza encouraged. Come back to now. Come back to me. Inch by careful inch, she continued to close the distance between them, speaking continuously in a low, even tone. When she was just a few feet away, she stopped and held out her hand, palm up, not reaching for him, but offering connection. For a long, tense moment, Echo remained frozen, caught between fear and trust. Then, with painful slowness, he lowered his head and took a single step toward her. Another step, a third, until his muzzle was almost touching her outstretched fingers. I'm here, Eliza whispered. I understand. With exquisite gentleness, Echo pressed his nose against her palm. A brief touch, there and gone in an instant, but unmistakable in its intent. Contact, connection, trust. Behind her, Eliza heard Marcus exhale in disbelief. Let's get you looked at, she said quietly to Echo. Will you let us help you now? As if in answer, the wolf sank to his belly in the grass before her, his eyes never leaving her face. The wild panic had receded, replaced by exhaustion and pain, but also a fragile thread of something that might have been trust. Hours later, after Echo had been sedated and his injuries treated, a deep puncture wound in his paw and minor electrical burns from the fence, Eliza sat beside his sleeping form in the sanctuary's medical facility. Marcus entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. I've never seen anything like that, he said, handing her one of the mugs. How did you know what to do? Eliza took the coffee gratefully, her eyes still on Echo's rising and falling chest. Because I've been where he is, she replied simply. Lost in memories so real they become your present. Trapped in pain that doesn't belong to now, but won't let go of you. Marcus sat beside her. You said you were photographing wolves in Syria when something happened. She nodded slowly. An airstrike. I was documenting a pack that had adapted to life in an abandoned village. They were remarkable, finding ways to survive in a world that had become unimaginably hostile. She swallowed hard. The bomb hit without warning. The den collapsed. The alpha pair, 3 yearlings, and 4 pups, all gone in an instant. And you were injured? Eliza's hand moved unconsciously to her side, where the shrapnel scars remained hidden beneath her clothing. Yes, but the physical wounds weren't the worst of it. That's why you stopped photographing. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. I couldn't look through a lens anymore without seeing them, without feeling responsible somehow. I came here thinking I could heal by being around wolves again, but I've just been hiding, going through the motions. Until Echo, Marcus said softly. Until Echo, she agreed, looking at the sleeping wolf with a mixture of concern and affection. He needed someone who understood. And maybe I needed him too. Over the next 2 weeks, Echo's recovery progressed slowly, but steadily. His physical wounds began to heal cleanly under Marcus's care, but more remarkable was the change in his demeanor. While still wary around most humans, he had formed an undeniable bond with Eliza. She spent hours each day sitting in his recovery enclosure, sometimes talking softly, sometimes simply being present. Gradually, Echo began to seek out her company, approaching for brief moments of physical contact before retreating to his own space. He's making incredible progress, Marcus remarked one afternoon as they observed Echo from the observation area. The board has agreed to extend his rehabilitation period. He still has a long way to go, Eliza replied. The physical wounds are healing, but the memories don't fade so easily. I wasn't just talking about Echo, Marcus said quietly, giving her a knowing look. Eliza didn't respond, but she couldn't deny the truth in his words. Something had shifted within her since that rainy day in the clearing. The grief was still there, but it no longer consumed her every waking moment. In helping Echo find his way back from trauma, she had begun to rediscover parts of herself she thought were lost forever. As Echo's strength returned, Eliza began taking him for short walks in a secluded section of the sanctuary, first on a long lead, then eventually free, trusting in the connection they had formed. During these quiet excursions, she would talk to him, not just about trivial things, but about the weight of her experiences, the nightmares that still occasionally plagued her, the guilt she carried for surviving when others had not. Echo would listen with that intense amber gaze, sometimes pressing his body against her leg when her voice grew thick with emotion, offering a wordless comfort that penetrated more deeply than any human consolation could have. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden light filtered through the trees, Eliza brought something she hadn't touched in nearly 2 years, her camera. She didn't immediately use it, simply let it hang around her neck as she and Echo walked their familiar route. "I used to capture life through this lens," she told him, her fingers absently brushing the camera's surface. "It was how I made sense of the world, finding beauty even in difficult places." Echo paused in his exploration of fallen log, looking back at her as if encouraging her to continue. "After Syria, I couldn't bear to look through it anymore," she admitted. "Everything I saw was filtered through loss. But lately, I've been wondering." With hands that trembled slightly, she raised the camera, not pointing it at Echo, but at the landscape around them, the way the light spilled through the branches, turning ordinary leaves into stained glass. The familiar weight of the camera, the soft click of the shutter, these sensations washed over her like an old melody suddenly remembered. She took another photo, and another, each one a small act of reclamation. When she lowered the camera, she found Echo sitting directly in front of her, his head tilted slightly as if in question. "Would you mind?" she asked softly, gesturing with the camera. For a moment, Echo simply regarded her with that unreadable gaze. Then, with deliberate movement, he straightened, his ears forward, his posture alert but relaxed, a portrait of wild dignity. Eliza raised the camera, adjusting the focus until Echo's amber eyes were sharp and clear in the viewfinder. The wolf held her gaze through the lens, allowing her to capture not just his image, but something deeper, a moment of perfect understanding between two survivors. As the weeks passed, Echo continued to make progress. While he never fully integrated with the other wolves in the sanctuary, he developed a tolerance for their presence. More significantly, he began to accept interaction with a select few sanctuary staff members, always with Eliza nearby. "He's going to be okay," Marcus said one evening as they watched Echo from the observation deck. "He might never be completely normal, whatever that means for a wolf with his history, but he's found his equilibrium." "Haven't we all?" Eliza replied with a small smile, raising her camera to capture the last rays of sunlight illuminating Echo's silver coat as he surveyed his domain. Later that night, as a full moon rose over the sanctuary, Eliza sat on the porch of her cabin, reviewing the day's photographs on her camera's small screen. The images were good, better than good. They captured something essential about Echo, about the sanctuary, about the delicate process of healing. A sound in the darkness drew her attention. Echo stood at the edge of the clearing, his coat silver in the moonlight. This was unusual. He typically remained in his enclosure at night, the sanctuary staff having found that routine and boundaries helped manage his anxiety. "Hello there," she called softly. "Couldn't sleep." The wolf approached with quiet confidence, climbing the steps to sit beside her chair. For a long moment, they simply existed together in comfortable silence, watching the moon climb higher in the sky. "I got a call today," Eliza said eventually, "from National Geographic. They've been trying to reach me for months, apparently. They want me to lead a conservation photography project in Yellowstone, documenting the wolf recovery program there." Echo's ears twitched toward her, listening. "I told them I'd think about it," she continued, reaching out to gently stroke his coarse fur. "It would mean leaving here for a while. But maybe it's time to start living again, instead of just surviving." Echo leaned slightly into her touch, a gesture that would have been unthinkable months ago. "You taught me that," she whispered, That survival isn't enough. That trauma changes you, but it doesn't have to define you. The wolf turned his amber gaze to her face, and in that moment, Eliza felt understood in a way she hadn't since before the bombing. Seen for both her wounds and her strength, accepted completely. The next morning, Eliza found Marcus in the research center, reviewing data on the sanctuary's newest residents. "I've made a decision," she announced without preamble. "I'm going to take that position with National Geographic, but I'd like to continue consulting with the sanctuary, especially on trauma cases like Echo." Marcus smiled broadly. "That's wonderful news. When do you leave?" "Next month, which gives me time to transition Echo to a more normal routine." She paused, then added, "And to document his story properly. I want people to understand what animals like him go through in conflict zones, and how remarkably they can recover with the right support." "His story or yours?" Marcus asked gently. Eliza considered this. "Both, I suppose. They're intertwined now." That afternoon, Eliza took Echo for what had become their regular walk. As they crested a small hill overlooking the sanctuary, she stopped to capture the panoramic view. Echo sat beside her, a calm presence at her side. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she said, lowering her camera to look at him directly. "Both of us carrying echoes of the past, but not controlled by them anymore." The wolf blinked slowly, his amber eyes reflecting the autumn sunlight. He was still scarred, still somewhat distant with others, still carried the marks of his past, but he was whole in a way that transcended perfect healing. As if sensing her thoughts, Echo pressed his body against her leg briefly before moving forward down the trail, glancing back as if to ensure she was following. Eliza smiled and adjusted her camera strap. "I'm coming," she assured him, taking the first steps down the path that would lead them both forward. In the golden light of the Montana afternoon, woman and wolf continued their journey. Two souls who had found in each other not just companionship, but a reflection of their own resilience, their own capacity to heal. Their past would always be part of them, but it no longer defined their future. Together, they had discovered that some bonds transcend words, transcend species, forged in understanding, strengthened by shared pain, and ultimately transformed into something that could only be called hope.